Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. For this tutorial, I wanted to test how I can add color to wafer paper without having to worry about it melting. So I thought I would try airbrush. And I added some texture, and of course I added my required gold. So let's get right to the video. Now I'm gonna be honest, this cake was a cake that I scraped down and reused. My schedule's been a little full lately and I didn't have time to bake fresh. So this is not for an order, I'm just upcycling. We'll call it upcycling. So anyway, this is a 6-inch cake and I am adding a layer of buttercream on it. This is my American buttercream and I will add a link to the recipe for you. And what I'm doing is I'm just doing a crumb coat and a final coat, basically all in one. Now, if it were for an order, I would go back, obviously, and have a fresh cake, first of all. But I would go back and add another layer of buttercream. But since it's not, you get the idea. I would just put it in the refrigerator or the freezer to firm up and then add another layer of buttercream. But for our purposes today, we're going to stick with just the one. And I'm getting it as smooth as I can get it. And then I'm going to pop it in the refrigerator while I make my decorations. Now these decorations are just 0 grade wafer paper. This is super easy, guys. I know I always say that, but this really is super easy. I'm just cutting them into squares. You could do circles if you prefer, or triangles, but I wanted to have some points that I could soften with my steamer here. So I just did 2 different sizes of squares, and then I'm just using my clothing steamer and just putting it in the steam just long enough to kind of soften it so that I can conform it into the shape that I want. And I did this with quite a few. You can see that the edges are starting to curl a little bit, and that's when you know that it's ready to be shaped. And make sure that you are keeping your hands from getting burned. I am moving it in and out from the steam, and I'm trying to keep the steam on the paper only, but of course your hands get in there a little bit. Just try not to be right on top of where the steam comes out if you can help it. I know this angle doesn't show it very well, but those are all the ones that I made, and I let them cool, set them to the side, and while that's happening, I'm gonna go ahead and add the fondant. You could do this cake with just buttercream, but since I was a little low on the buttercream, as you saw, I didn't have enough to do a second coat, so I thought I'm gonna go ahead and use fondant. But you could, like I said, you could do it on buttercream, just exactly the same. Well, you don't do it the same, but it turns out just the same. And I measured the circumference of my cake, the height and circumference, and I'm rolling this out long enough and tall enough to wrap around the cake. And I had rolled out a little a round disc to go on the top, and that's up, well, you can't see it, but I already rolled that out. Now I'm just popping the bubbles and then smoothing it down. I really like to use the combination of the quilting mat and this quilting ruler. These tools come in very handy for cake because you can use the measurements on the mat as well as using the measurements of the ruler, and use your ruler as a guide where to cut to keep your line straight. And I just added a little bit of shortening to stick the fondant on. I put a board all over the top, flipped it upside down, and then I'm cutting off the excess. And then flip it back over again, and voila, you have a finished top. Now I'm adding some more shortening onto the sides. You could add water if you prefer. You could even do simple syrup. I just prefer the shortening because if you don't get it on right the first time, you can take it off and move it around. And the shortening just absorbs into your fondant. There's already shortening that's been added into your fondant anyways. So you're not gonna taste it. It's just gonna absorb into it. And I would let that panel sit for a good 15 minutes before you even try to lift it onto your cake. If it's firmer, it's easier to work with. And then I'm just smoothing that join together and trying to remove any air bubbles. I put it in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes to firm up a little bit so that I could go back in and cut off the excess off the top without it stretching and pulling. Now to add this wafer paper, I'm just using some piping gel. And then use your toothpicks to hold it in place until it sets up. I just need to play around with these until you get them in a spot that looks pleasing to your eye. I wanted to do the bigger ones on the top and then gradually, what's the word I'm trying to say? Go down to smaller on the bottom. There's a word. If you know what that word is, please let me know. I can't find my words. Anyway, start with big at the top and go down to small at the bottom. Graduate, that's the word. Graduate down to the smaller. And I did this kind of just add an arch, an abstract arch. Once you've got these all attached, you're going to want to leave it in the refrigerator to set up. I would say it will take about an hour for it to set up. And then I wanted to add some texture because I thought if you do airbrush on top of some texture, it's going to really bring out that texture and add that special touch instead of just having a simple background because, I have a hard time doing that. I like to add some texture where I can. And this is just crumpled up paper towel, and I'm just dipping it in thinned down buttercream and kind of stippling it on like that. And it works really well. And to protect my board and the base, or the base of that I have my cake on, because it's hard to get that off, the airbrush off of your board once it's on there. So if you wrap some saran wrap around the base, that will help you later. And these are the colors I'm going to use. The blue, purple, and pink. Now, if you do not have an airbrush, don't worry. There are other brands. I know Wilton has some, and there's other brands also that have, it's like an aerosol spray that you can use. And you get the same effect as you would with an airbrush. And I'm just adding this in. I'm kind of following the arch of the wafer paper ruffles. And just kind of layering it up. And make sure you get it on the ruffles. I would keep the airbrush a little distance away from the wafer paper so you're not oversaturating it. I wouldn't try to get a solid color with this because the concentration of the liquid from the airbrush that you would need to get a solid color, it's going to affect the wafer paper ruffles. It's going to soften them and they're going to droop. So hold your airbrush away a little bit and just keep it in mind that you don't want to overdo it. And I am using my favorite Barnabas Gold to add the gold touches. And guys, there's going to be a link in my description box. I have a code to get a discount on Barnabas Gold. There's an affiliate link and a code that you can go to and use the code to get your discount. I think I can't remember. I will put it in here. I will link it and I'll put it in the description box. And then just remove your plastic wrap. And then I'm using a mixture of Everclear and luster dust to just touch the tips of the wafer paper. You don't have to do that, but I feel like it emphasizes the shape of the wafer paper ruffles. I think it just adds to it. And I've had the question lately from a couple people, what is Everclear? Everclear is an alcohol. And it's, people use vodka and some people use Everclear. I like the Everclear best. I feel like you get a better coverage in one coat and it's a brighter finish to me. But don't worry, the alcohol evaporates and then you are left with just the gold color. Now, if you don't want to use alcohol, you can use lemon extract, works really well. You can do that too. And then I'm just removing just a little bit. Of course, the airbrush left a little bit. It snuck in there. It's sneaky like that. But just use a wet down paper towel to remove that and just try not to touch the cake. But that's still a lot better than the entire board being covered. And then I'm just spinning the toothpicks to get them out. Otherwise, you might accidentally pull the wafer paper right out. So there it is, guys. I hope you liked it, and I think it turned out really well, and I love the kind of ethereal, kind of airy look of the colors. So if you give it a go, send me pictures on Instagram. I love to see your work, and we'll catch you next time. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my video, and if you'd like to watch some other videos, go ahead and click on the link to one of these other videos shown here. And if you would like to check out my other social media, I am on Facebook and Instagram under the same name, Sophisticakes by Mary. And please take the time to share, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload another video. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next tutorial.